everyone, welcome back to another fabulous session of Pen Connect, Penmancy's unique venture where we try to bring in authors closer to their readers. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome our panelists for today, Dr. Harshali Singh, Shutapa Basu, and Dinesh Prasad. We will be talking about their latest releases, and the overarching theme of this session is going to be historical echoes that permeate throughout their books. So, welcome to Pen Connect, everyone.
Thank you.
Good to
Thank
be here.
you. Lovely to be here.
All right, before we delve into our session for tonight, I'll just give a brief introduction of all of our guests to our viewers. Dr. Harshali Singh is a member judge at the District Consumer Dispute Redressal Commission, an award winning author, a poet, an academician, an occupational therapist, and a painter. She is a recipient of the coveted Munshi Premchand Literature Award 2023, conferred to her by Aesthetics International for her contribution to the field of literature. Dr. Harshali was also awarded the prestigious Ashoka Award by Charles Walters Council for Innovation and Research 2023. Her most recent historical fiction book, released in December 2023, Anarkali, The Courtesan, the Pawn, and the Queen, is based on the mysterious and complex women in history, Anarkali, and we will be talking about her very, very soon. Shutapa Basu is a best-selling, award-winning author as well as an educationist, a poet, storyteller, and a translator. Her historical novel, The Curse of Nadir Shah, won the Best Fiction Award by Author Awards 2019, instituted by J.K. Papers in the Times of India. She is the 2016 first prize winner of the Times of India's Right India campaign for Amish Tripathi, while her debut, a psychological thriller, Dangle, was nominated for the Anupam Kher Award for the Best Debut English Novel in 2017. In 2021, she received an award for excellence in publishing by the Public Diplomacy Forum. She is well known for her best selling historical fiction Padmavati, The Queen Tells Her Own Story. Her second historical fiction initiated the Invader series with The Legend of Genghis Khan 2018 and continued with The Curse of Nadir Shah 2019. Recently, her two anthologies, Out of the Blue, Stories with a Twist, and The Anatomy of Affection, Tales That Touch You, have been released. She published a cozy mystery for young readers, The Cursed Inheritance, as well as an English translation of the iconic Thakurmar Julie titled Princesses, Monsters, and Magical Creatures. A nonfiction for young readers, The Birth of My Nation, was released in 2022. This book has been prescribed as a supplementary reader in several schools. Her latest and 10th book, launched in 2023, is Parvati Bai, The Forgotten Witness of the Battle of Panipat. During her 25-year publishing career with Oxford University Press, Encyclopedia Britannica, and UFS Learning, she has produced over 600 books. That's amazing. Shutapa speaks on her own podcast called The Shutapa Basu Show and manages Shutapa Studio that trains school faculty and creative writing aspirants. She also runs a live chat show, Bistro Bus Conversations, with Shutapa Basu that hosts unique people from across spheres and the world. You can watch her storytelling on Shutapa Your Story Friend playlist on her YouTube channel, and you can know more about her works on www.shutapabasu.com. Dinesh Prasad writes literary fiction and is fascinated with magical realism. He reads a lot so he can write adequately. Dinesh is brimming with stories and ideas, but distractions of earning a living make it a constant struggle to manifest creative inspiration in time to make it see the light of the day. Dinesh, I think all of us are struggling with that. Writers, common struggle. Yes. It's a good struggle of a word junkie. His inspiration comes from daily life, what he reads, the people he meets, and that is what he wants to talk about in his writing. Small things on a large canvas of a novel, hoping that these small things will resonate with the readers and make the stories memorable for all they are worth. Welcome to Pen Connect, everyone. Such an illustrious panel, and I am going to blame all of you if I fumble anywhere because I am starstruck right now. I am a huge fan of all of your works, so if I fumble anyone, you guys are to blame.
We won't let you. Don't worry. I think you just need to trigger us and we will.
Okay, we have a lot of people joining in over here. Hello, Mona, Deepthi, Kajal. We have Prasanna, Lakshmi, then Natasha, Deepa, Aparna. Thank you for joining in. All right, let's move on to the first question. And this question has to be asked because all of your novels are such diverse narratives. So, my common question to all three of you is what inspired you to explore your particular subjects? Harshali, let's start with you. Why Anarkali?
I think Anarkali as a woman has only been shown in one dimension, and that has been the love affair with Salim, or the fact that she was a courtesan. Nobody, or at least I have not found any account of her as a woman. And how it came about was that while discussing the fourth book in the Haveli series, with Dipankar, the publisher, Edomania, we were talking about women and how women issues were still very relatable from what they were earlier, because the Haveli series talks about, or the fourth book, I was talking about taking it back into the past on when the Haveli was made, etc. So we were talking on those lines. And so I was telling him that, how women, the issues that women face today are quite relatable to what they probably were facing at that time, and not probably, but actually. And from there we started talking about strong women in history, and how uh, you know people are writing about women in a from a different angle, from a different lens, from a different perspective. And so it was Dipankar who said that, what do you think about Narkali? I said, look, she's always fascinated me, but I have a grouse that nobody has written about her. The way I would like to read her, I would like to know more about her as a woman, as what made this young girl who came into the harem at 12, 13, or even lesser age group. And then, without any backing, without anybody to support her, she was able to climb up the ladder of a very hierarchical harem to become the favorite of not one but two great emperors, who had probably several other beautiful women there. So it could not only have just been beauty, it had to be more. She would have had to have a very strong emotional core, a very strong mindset, or she wouldn't have to know how to control and press which buttons for which person to reach that stage. And so he said, then why don't you write about it? And it just struck me that, yes, why don't I write about it? So then I stopped researching for my fourth novel in the Haveli series, and then shifted gears and then started researching for Anarkali. And that was the genesis of the book per se. So I can't take all the credit, but I will share that credit with Dipankar, Vidomania's founder. And so certainly, I mean, eventually I think conversation and communication has been the roadmap for me to get new ideas and interesting, intriguing ideas. The more I thought about it, the more I tried to locate her history. It kind of urged me to see why there was nothing written about her. Why was she completely erased? And this is actually a feeling I carry, the that she was very purposefully erased from history to a large extent. There's nothing written about her, not in Akbarnama, not in Jahangirnama, not in any of, even Daniel's chronicler did not mention her as his mother. The word that is given for his mother is just a concubine, while the other son Murad, who was also born to a concubine, his mother's name is given in the history. So these are the things which made me realize that some injustice had been done to her, along with several others. But the fact that someone wanted to remove her from ever being known, and that she left such a huge footprint and such a deep footprint, that her absence, uh, you know, just her absence made her so conspicuous that everybody wanted to know more and more about her, and she became a mystery rather than being erased. It made me want to know more about her, write about her, find out about her. And there have been disappointing moments. There have been moments where I felt that I wish there was more written about her. I wish someone had made that effort. And maybe, if she had that kind of influence, if she could have, somehow found a way to chronicle her own journey, that would have been great. So therein came the historical fiction part, because I had to then find a bridge to make sure that it was a well rounded story. So that is how it began.
Right, absolutely. You know, as they say, if you want to read a book and it hasn't been written yet, then you must write it. Yes.
Right. Yes, absolutely.
Shutapa, why Parvati Bai and how did you come upon her? What do you want to convey to your readers through this story?
So Parvati Bai is actually a part of a series, which is about the heroic women of India. The series started with Padmavati, and then it continues now with Parvati Bai, and the third book is still to be conceived. So why Parvati Bai? Now, the first thing when I look for women in history, I overlook women about whom so much has been written and people know them well, like Lakshmi Bai and so on. I look for women who have breached male bastions, who have made a niche for themselves, and who have a voice. And also women who have tried to change history, sometimes create history. So Parvati Bai, I chanced upon her because I was trying to, find out more about the Battle of Panipat, which is a very, very important battle for the history of India. It is a watershed event because I'm sure everybody knows that if that battle had been won by the Marathas, then India would have had a Hindu or a Maratha Samrajya, and the British would have never been able to fill the void of the crumbling Mughal empire and sort of dominate India for 300 years. So that battle becomes a very, very important event for India, for the history of India. And historians have chronicled that battle in many ways. They have tried to analyze why is it that the Maratha forces were defeated when there was nothing there, whether it was the people, the soldiers, or the guns, the ammunition, the arms, the weapons, the battle strategy. Everything was so good. So why is it that the Marathas lost? So there have been a lot of analysis about that. But the strange thing that I discovered is there was a survivor and a witness to that battle, which was Parvati Bai. Parvati Bai was the wife of Sadashivrao Bhau, who was the commander of the Maratha forces. She went all the way from Pune to Panipat. The entire journey crossing so many rivers across the Malwa Plateau, which was not at all a small feat. And finally, first they were in Delhi and then there was the siege at Panipat. So at Panipat, during the siege also, she was there constantly looking after the logistics, constantly looking after it was not just the soldiers of the Maratha army who were there, but there were a lot of pilgrims who had accompanied the Maratha army to visit the pilgrimage spots in the North India. So they were also there. So she had to manage the logistics like food, stores, fodder for the animals, the horses, and so many other things, medicines, everything. She was the one who was managing that logistics in the camp because she told her husband that I will be your munim. You look after the battle strategy. You decide how you're going to fight. I will be in the background and look after everything. At the same time, when I started delving more and more into her character and her life, I realized that she was herself a warrior and she was pretty well educated, which was very strange because in those days, girls were not given any formal education. So, how was she educated? She was married into the Peshwa family because Sadashiv Rao Bhau is a cousin of the Peshwa at that time. And she was married at a very young age. She was only 10 years old and she came from a very humble background. So how did she become a warrior and how was she educated? So that was something really interesting. And of course, I must admit that there is very little that I found when I researched about her. I only got to know these snippets, and I had to sort of literally try and understand the ambience of those days, the customs, the traditions, which were followed in Shaniwar Wada, and try to find out how it is it that she did become educated. And this is how I felt. And that is, I think, if you read the book, you will realize that at 10 years of age, she was only a very small girl when she came into Shaniwarwada. And, there were many other child brides. The brother of the Peshwa also was a child bride, and they became friends, and they would play hopscotch, in the courtyards. And in the same courtyards, the boys, that is Sadashiv Rao Bhau and Peshwa's younger brother, all of them were getting educated. So possibly she would have stood behind the door and heard what the gurus were telling them, or it's possible that she would have, tapped her husband when he came back at night and asked him about whatever they had studied and, tried to learn from him. At the same time, again, how did she get her training in arms? So it's possibly that she, made her husband teach her horse riding and teach her how to, you know, um, use the katar, the sword play, the bow and arrow, and so on. Now, when they were in Panipat, Parvati Bai also advised Sadashiv Rao on the strategy, which was not at all liked by the other Sardars, the other Maratha Sardars, who felt that they were the ones who should decide strategy. And, they simply disagreed with Sadashiv Rao because he believed that he should use guns and have a pitched battle, while the Maratha Sardars felt that, the kind of strategy that they had been using till then was something like, shoot and scoot kind of a thing, guerrilla warfare, which was very good in the plateau area of Maharashtra, but did not work at all on the plains of northern India. But obviously, they felt that they were not asked, and, their advice was not sought. And as a result, they were very resentful of Parvati Bai. So, this is how, and the person, the woman of that time, about whom I found out a lot, was Gopika Bai, who was the wife of the Peshwa. So what I realized is that Parvati Bai, whose voice should have been heard by the historians, they should have found out more about her, and they should have chronicled her opinion and her views as to why the war at Panipat was lost, was not heard. So I wondered, is it possible that her voice was suppressed for many other reasons? Because when I started again looking more into Gopika Bai, the environment, I realized that somewhere there was a hint that she was a spy. And because of her espionage, they had lost the battle, which
Right.
obviously was not true, because she had no motive. Why should she want the Marathas to lose the battle? There was no reason.
Right. That's really interesting, Shutapa. That's really, really interesting. And I'm sure, many of our viewers have already been enticed enough to get the book and to know whether she was really a spy. All right, moving on to Dinesh. Dinesh, your book is it's an out and out fiction, and it is set in an indeterminate place in pre-independence India, and explores various relationships. Tell us about this, enigmatic setting, and tell us about Frida.
Sure. Thank you. The Frida, so my book is also like Dr. Harshali and Shatapa. My book is also about a woman. The core character is a woman. However, in the book, the whole narration is done by the lover of this woman. There is no place where she comes in the forefront and talks about herself. It's all the men in her life that are talking about her. And the story starts somewhere in the late 1920s, early 1930s, and goes on till the 1980s. It is essentially a story of a woman who stands her ground with respect to her respectability in the society, who stands her ground with respect to the decisions that she has taken. And in all her decisions, she tries to be absolutely fair with all the relationships that she has in her life. And to give you a background, she was born as one of the seven daughters. The mother had a thorough dislike for her because the mother nearly died when she was being born. And I think through her growing up years, she was a disadvantaged child because the mother never really showered any affection on her. But she falls in love with a gentleman who was the district collector of that place, and they are to be married. And then he suddenly disappears on the day of the marriage, and the mother refuses to change the situation for this girl. So there's a man who comes up, and she marries her off to this man. It's an interesting one because this man is an orphan and he's been brought up by his ayah and he has an inheritance and he's living a lavish life. But Frida just doesn't love him. And I think that's the situation for the first 3 to 5 years of their marriage. And it is during that time she meets the husband's best friend and falls in love with him. And I think the important part to get from the book is that Frida has an agency. She has complete agency on her body and her soul, and she exercises that. And the important part is when she exercises that agency, she's also willing to take responsibility for the decisions that she's taken. And therefore, the book explores the delicacy of a lot of these relationships that are a part of her life, because any individual is essentially a network of the relationships that they are a part of. She has 7 sons, and all the sons are impacted in one way or the other because of this uncommon triage of a relationship that exists in their home. And the story essentially talks about the journey of the three protagonists, the husband, Frida, and the lover. Uh, the story is told from the lover's perspective. And because this is something which is not very common in the society, um, I have used certain instruments or techniques of magical realism to make it a lot more interesting and rooting it in the culture that you have in Central India. I come from Central India, and I think while I have not named the place, all of those elements are very vividly presented. Narmada and the plateau and the hills, the mango orchards. So yeah, you will see a lot of that. Uh, but yeah, the not naming of the place is also important for me because um, it could be the story could happen anywhere, right? And I think not naming the place also brings a universality to the context of the story that I'm talking about. Yeah, and then you also realize that in the story I have named probably 5 of the characters. Rest everybody is called by an adjective. So I think that's another interesting way to ensure that you don't get lost in the multiplicity of names that you have in a particular book. So you give them a certain identity and you call them by that identity, and then the readers would remember that. But yeah, that's
Yes,
my story.
I would completely agree with that because the adjectives were what did it for me, because there was this host of characters and the way that you have described the sons, it's just mind blowing. And 7 seems to be the magical number because Harshali's Haveli series is also about 7 sisters. So yes,
Yeah.
so that's a very good coincidence. All right, we have a lot of questions from the audience already. I'll take a few before asking my very, very important question about your narrative choices. All right. We have Ranjini asking, when writing a book on history, does the author have the freedom to add their own perspectives to it, or should it be just a narrative as it is? Harshali, would you like to take it? And then we'll move to Shatapa.
Yeah. Briefly, I'll just say that since it's historical fiction, and I've written about a character who has not been described in any form or manner except what you've seen on celluloid or what you've seen in plays. I had that freedom to be able to add my own take to what she would have looked like, or how my story wanted her to look like with red hair and green eyes. So I could do that. However, obviously, if you take a character which is well known, you can't really play around that much. But for me, the first historical fiction I wrote, I had that huge, that big playground where I could do what I wanted with her. So essentially, except for the facts that I wanted to keep track of, which were the big plot points, I didn't want to move away. I mean, I didn't really have to stick to the to how she was taken into the harem, or what was her end, or whether she ran away or not, or where did she go. So I had that landscape that I could traverse if I wanted to, which I did. So certainly, I think, were you able to hear me? I think I got cut for a second.
We could hear you.
We could hear
Yeah,
you.
so
Yes.
I think it depends on the character you're choosing. Um, of course, there are other nuances to it. If you take a religious character that you want to write about, you do need to keep, keep the sentiments of the people around you, in mind. You do need to be responsible while you're writing about a particular character. Of course, there's creative freedom involved, and you can use it, but I feel as writers we do need to be responsible to a large extent, because many people read your work and can get impacted by how you are portraying a character. So certainly there is a lot of there should be a lot of creative freedom. However, even freedom has boundaries and should have boundaries. Mm, More than boundaries, responsibility. I think I
Right.
will end with that.
Right. Shitapa, you must be facing this challenge all the time, considering you are writing about well known historical figures with a lot of history behind them. How do you manage this balance between, historical accuracy and creativity?
So I have one principle that I base all my historical narratives. I will not always call them fiction. They are mostly historical narratives, which is when I do my research and I saw there was a question about how do you manage different versions. Yes, I have to read every version and come to a common, version of it all, where everybody has said the same thing. I try my best to be very objective about that. So history, if you look at it, is also pretty subjective, because history is actually interpretation of evidence. You can't really go back to that era. So if you start, when you do the research and you have read so much and you have done your, delved into all the nuances of that character or the times, the event, you will find that if you put it in a pattern, in a linear pattern, there will always be gaps, because those are the places where your historian has not been able to find any evidence. So I use those gaps for my perspective, for my story to go through. But I do not distort any of the facts. I definitely always base my story, whether it's about a character or it is about an event, on the facts. Not only that, research is not always not always pinpointed or focused on the character, the protagonist, even though the book may be about the protagonist. It also involves the times, the era, what were the customs, what was the language being used, what was the dress being worn. That is also what gives you the full picture. So I always go into that. In fact, though I do my main research before I start even plotting my book, but I consistently continue to research while I'm writing, because my mission when I write a historical narrative is to pull my reader into that era. I want the reader to feel that it's actually happening around them.
Right, right.
So let it come alive for that person. literally bring that person into that so that is what is my mission, and that's the reason I consistently keep doing research. To give you a very small example, when I was doing Genghis Khan, I could not go to Mongolia to actually do the research there. I wish I could. So I did the next best thing is to consult a lot of Mongolists. But one of the most interesting things about their dress, the Mongols in the 11th century, is they used to wear this belt of knives, which had a very long knife, which was actually used for attacking animals, and a very small knife, which was used for cutting tobacco. So that was so interesting, and I put that into the way the Genghis Khan dressed or the Mongols dressed. So these are
Right.
the small things that really, I think, make any historical narrative come alive.
Absolutely, absolutely. And okay, on that note, I'll just quickly move to Dinesh. We have a question for you from Mona. Supposedly, you were still in India and writing this book. Would you have treated the plot, characters, relationship paradigm any differently?
That's a very good question. uh, Probably not, because I'm still very much a part of India. uh, so you can't get India out of your blood, right? Uh, and the thing is, um, the story, the way it pans out over 50 years, it has been pegged on the historical events that happened in those 50 years. So, continuing from what Dr. Harshali and Shutapa were saying, um, I have used the reverse of what you have. So, I have a fiction, but I have kind of given them the what shall I say, the pointers on the historical events that happened from 37 till 1980s. Now, that is another way to kind of root your story in a particular context. Now, for me, that context doesn't change whether I'm in India or anywhere else, right? The other thing that wouldn't have changed anything in the manuscript would be the ethos, the cultural elements, the way people used to dress, our traditional customs with respect to the way we do pujas, the way we celebrate festivals, the color, the heat, the dust. I don't think that will change wherever I am. And um, that's what makes a book which is based in India so much more richer in terms of the cultural elements, right? So while you may have all of those emotional relationship dynamics happening, but you can always highlight them with the cultural context. So, for example, um, the the meeting of the day that the husband realizes that something is going on between them is a Holi, where there is this gulal which the parrot falls into, right? So there is parrot, there is gulal, there is Holi that's happening, there is Shehnai playing in the back end. That's very Indian. You can't take it out anywhere you go. So,
Absolutely. Yes, 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 completely. And festivals provide such a rich atmosphere for conflict,
yeah,
So
yeah.
Can I
I
just
totally
comment a
understand
little,
where you're coming
comment
from.
a little on
So, because
Dinesh's
your
book?
book, the narrative spans a lot of years. What
Yeah.
kind of research went into creating all these markers in history and all these cultural elements that you have put in?
So, this is my second book. My first book was based on the independence of India, right? So it spanned from a few years before to a few years after, but predominantly the stories were focused in that 1 year pre and post independence, right? So when I was writing that, I had done a lot of research. I had done quite a bit of research on our history starting from 1911s, because there was Muslim League and then there was Congress and there was all of that. So I had done a whole host of research for that till about 1960s. So I leaned on that to be able to build out some of the events in that time frame. But from after then, I did a lot of research on the local politics, because one of the characters, which is Mahesh, is a part of the local politics. He gets to be nominated to the local assembly and things like that. So I had to read the history of Madhya Pradesh for that period, to see how the Congress committees were organized, how the people were elected, what was the nomination process. And I think I brought all of that within the story. So yeah, historical research is important. And also, when your story spans such a long time, you need to give something to the readers to relate it in terms of the time frames, the dynamics, the events, the socio-political context of how it's progressing. And I think it impacted the sons, it impacted Mahesh, it impacted their overall economics of running a household, right? So yeah,
Yes, yes.
research is important.
Completely, completely. It's a good thing that, you know, you did so much of research for your first book. You could just carry it forward to the next book. Okay, we have a lot of questions on research, but there are a lot of compliments as well. Somebody, I'll just highlight the compliments. Daria is saying, "Sir, I had the pleasure to read your book in the Penmancy program. It is a masterpiece. Love the book so much."
Thank you.
Uh,
Thank you so much.
we had another compliment. I cannot find it, for Shutapa ma'am and the work that she has done. All right, we have a lot of questions about research. Deepa Vishal is asking, in the course of your research, do you ever come across varying versions? All right, Deepa, I think Shutapa ma'am has already taken this versions. If yes, then how do you decide which one to take into consideration for your narrative in a country where history plays a really important role and where people remain steadfast in their beliefs about historical events and are mostly reluctant to accept other versions and possibilities? Do you find it challenging to present a different version than you might have come across? I think Harshali and Shitapa ma'am have already taken this question. And yes, as Harshali said, responsibility is a huge factor when you write these things. Harshali, would you like to add something to this
Yeah.
question?
Yes, I'll just add that certainly it is challenging, especially if there are different versions of it, as there are for Anarkali and for other, for the other books that I've researched. One of them being Anatomy of Choice, wherein I had to speak to a lot of people. The just to give a little bit of context. In fact, let me talk about Paradox of Dreams since we are short on time. So, Paradox of Dreams is the third book in the Haveli series, and the book is based about on this young girl who's one of the daughters of the family, Sharma family, that's living in the Haveli, and she is blind. She is also an empath. So these were the two things that I had to that I had to research very deeply to be able to present them convincingly to a reader. And along with that, she's also solving crime. So she's part of an SIT. So a blind girl who's an empath who's also solving crime. And I knew that my reader base is very scholarly and very, very fact based. So I can't just say, okay, just believe this because I'm saying it. I have to give that out to them that if they don't believe in the fact that she's an empath, then they should be able to believe that she has heightened intuition, which a lot of us have, especially women. So to be able to walk that line, very fine line of research and putting uh, the part of research which will convince your reader that what you're presenting in your words is believable. I think that is where most authors tend to either fall or pass, you know. So I think that is one of the most important parts of it. So far as having different versions of the same story for Anarkali, there are several theories that are there. As I said, there's nothing written about her, but there are several theories that you will find all over, that it was just a pomegranate garden, or that she died in a certain way and it was then created into this beautiful play, but written by somebody, and hence her death was, by immurement, that is burial, burying someone alive in a wall. So
Yes.
there are several theories that are there available on, all over the place. You can go into the books, you can go into the dusty libraries of Agra, you can go into Fatehpur Sikri and talk to all the guides that are there, and they have their own versions. You can talk to, the professors who are who are AMU professors who are teaching history and teaching a part of what I've written about. So there are several ways, and all of them are coming from a place of their own perceptions, right? So everybody who you talk to is coming from their own space and how they want to look at her or the character that you have chosen to write about. So from all of that research, because that research is your spine to create a story that will stand on its own two legs. And so to be able to say that, okay, now I can stand behind my book, your research has to be the strongest point of your book. Otherwise, I feel, as authors who have this need to present the best work that they can to the world, uh, I don't think we can safely stand behind our work and say that I own this
Right. Uh,
art or creative writing that I've done. So certainly research, there is no shortcut to it. But there is a line that you draw, that I because there's so much out there, right? But so you need to focus on what you want to write about. What is your two or three tangents that you have to research on? Otherwise, there's a world out there. And this time, literally, the publisher said, "Aap please kitab bhej do. Enough. You can't keep going on and on about this." And I agree with Chitaba that you want to keep working on it again and again. You want to add another layer to it, so that when the reader is reading it, they're transported into the world of, or the whichever world you're creating for the reader. uh, but there is a time to stop, there is a time to filter, there is a time to make sure that, as we were just saying, that the reader is in the world but is able to look at it from a distance as well, to appreciate what you have done, or what, the invitation that you have created for them to step into that world. So I think research is certainly, no two questions on it, but again, filters are required.
Right. And on that note, we have a very pertinent question from Natasha Sharma. She's saying research is such a fun thing to do. How does one decide that enough research has been done? Chitapa ma'am, you were just talking about how you are researching consistently. What would you like to tell Natasha and all of us who are doing endless amount of research and never stopping?
So, like Harshali said, yes, you have to focus on your book and on your story. You will, when you start researching, there's a huge mountain that you will discover of all kinds of facts and very interesting facts, and you will want to put all of it in. But if you start putting all of it in, you will possibly lose the storyline. So your focus must be the storyline, and how I do it is I find away all that trivia, and then I use that to do my marketing of the book. So that is how I use that research. The
That's
other
very,
thing,
very strategic. I love it. Yes.
the other thing is that all that all the research that you do, it's as Harshali very rightly pointed out, you have to create an ambience. And what Dinesh said also, I mean, India is so rich in its culture. You can take festivals, you can take colors, you can take seasons, and you can create that ambience wherein your protagonist literally flowers, literally blooms. You cannot write a historical fiction, even if it is based or focused on a protagonist, completely isolated from the environment around.
Yeah.
So you have to create that environment, and that environment, the creation of that environment, maybe in the 11th century, maybe in the 9th century, needs a lot of research.
That's true.
Especially, like Dinesh said, that he has set it in Madhya Pradesh. But Madhya Pradesh in 1920s, what was it like? We don't know. We
Yeah.
haven't
Yeah.
actually interacted with that Madhya Pradesh. So obviously he has to research and create that
Yeah.
ambience around his characters to
Yeah.
make those characters relevant. And the other thing that I usually tell my mentees, your aim is to make your reader relate to your protagonist.
Right.
That reader must feel the pain, must feel the joy, and only then the reader is with you, throughout the story, through the highs and the lows. So
Yes.
that emotion, that emotive relationship is very necessary. That's what I
Yes.
think makes any book that interesting and not put downable.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Character resonance is something that carries the book on its shoulders. I feel sometimes even more than plot does. Character resonance carries the book forward. Dinesh, we have a question from Ranjani. Does the interpretation of a strong woman protagonist is different when a man pens it? How do you perceive the subtle emotions of a female? All right, this is interesting.
That's really a trap, Dinesh.
No, no, it's a very difficult one. I don't know how to answer it, but I'll try. You know, I don't know if it's any different when when a man pens it versus a woman pens it. I think it's more a human story, right? That's one. And second, I don't think men grow up in isolation of women, right? Depends on kind of influences that you have had in your life. So I grew up very closely with my grandmother for a very very large part till probably I was 25. I was very close to my grandmother, and then I left town and did a whole host of other things in life. Um, and she used to talk about a lot of things. She used to talk about people. She used to talk about her memories. She used to talk about history. She would talk about this thing happened when the Independence Day was celebrated. This is what I had cooked. This is how we had gone for the flag ceremony. And I think maybe I have imbibed a lot of that. Now, one of the things while writing this story, I had to be absolutely honest too, was not to portray the men as misogynist and not to portray Frida as some sort of a loose character. I think that was extremely important, personally, from my point of view, because what Frida has gone through, what her husband did, or what Mahesh did, let's talk about the events rather than the judgments, right?
Yeah.
And it takes a very fine balance to maintain continuously to ensure that there is a right emotional heft that is being created by the story without creating very adverse characters, because my story was not about hate, right? So I had to treat it delicately with the right set of vulnerabilities, with the right set of outcomes. Of course, not all outcomes are positive, but still you have to ensure that your character goes through a journey and that your character leaves an impact on the readers. So even if it's a very small character, if you remember, there's Sushila auntie in the character, and she probably would be over, let's say, 30 pages, coming in and out, but she leaves a mark, and she leaves her quirkiness as an imprint on the reader's minds, and she's important to the story. Uh, so I think you have to be absolutely fair to the personality of each of the characters to ensure that the gender bias doesn't come in. I think that's the most important thing that you need to work with. Unless you want to write a novel of misogyny, or you want to write a novel of um, some some character trait that you want to accentuate in your book, then yeah, you go full blast for that. But my book was more around um, the softer, the emotional side of relationships.
Right. This is absolutely true, and we were actually discussing about the same thing in our previous session, where Anupama Jain and Shalini Malik also said that when we are talking about relationships, the gender does not really come into play because we are talking of human experience, and the human experience is going to be very similar for a man as well as a woman. So yes, definitely.
Thank you.
Okay, we have another question.
Sorry.
Vidya Sanat. That's okay, Harshali. You're back now.
Yeah,
Have
yeah.
any
I'm
of
so
you
sorry. I'm
written?
in Solan actually. I'm sorry. I'm in Solan for the Shulini Lit Fest. So the I can't really say anything about the web. The Wi-Fi.
That's okay. That's okay. So
Yeah.
we have a question. Have any of you written books apart from historical works? I feel writing historical fiction is the toughest because along with creativity, you need to be armed with strong research. Yes, we discussed that. Can you suggest a few tips and tricks for a writer who would like to venture into historical writing? Harshali, would you like to take this first?
I was about to comment on. I'll just before I answer the question, I have to say, Dinesh, it felt as if you were talking about my anatomy of choice, because I deal with the similar, this sort of a decision that the protagonist takes, that she's trying to figure out whether it's the right one or not. There's a threesome involved, and the word delicate and handling it delicately is what really resonates with me. So, thank you so much for using that, and I'm really looking forward to to sorry again, but yeah. So to answer the question, tips and tricks to write, venture into historical fiction, just research and make sure that you will most likely only put 10% of how much you've researched into the book, Vidya. But trust me, the more you know about that era or the character or whatever you want to write about, the more confident you will be while you are writing the story. So you will never falter, you will never feel inadequate when you are talking about your work, when you're owning your work. So I think for historical fiction, more than, I mean, I feel research for any book, any genre is the most important thing, but more so for a historical fiction, because there are facts that are available to everybody, and you don't want to go wrong on that. So certainly have your facts straight, make notes, make lots and lots of lists, and just go for it. Don't think so much.
Absolutely. Shutapa, tips for historical writing.
So I can only add to what Shali said. Number one, when you're doing historical writing, first and foremost, you have to focus on what is it that you're going to write about. Is it going to write? Are you going to write about a historical figure? Are you going to write about a historical event, or is it something else? Just a general. You want to bring about a historical atmosphere during that time, like Dinesh has done as a background. So, what is it that you're really writing when you're getting into historical writing? The second thing is that, as I told you, it's as Hashali also said, facts are all there for anybody to explore and find out. So it's good to know your facts, check out different versions of those facts, and then decide for yourself that this is the version that I'm going to follow, because most people have said, talked about it. So that is to be safe. Unless you are planning to do something different, you want to bring out a different version, that's totally up to you. The other thing is that your resources, your sources of research. So it's always good to go to libraries, uh, always good to consult books, because the written word carries a lot of weight. Of course, you can go to blogs. Of course, you can download PDFs. Uh, I would suggest not to use Wikipedia, because that is commonest source that you go to, but then it's
Yes,
not
and it is
always.
very unreliable, very unreliable.
So try to have very reliable sources from where you take your when you do your research. And as we said earlier, you will always discover a lot of things. You have to remember what you want to put into your book and what you want to keep aside to be used maybe later. So I think those are the tricks.
Yes. Dinesh, would you like to add something regarding historical fiction, like having, constructed such a huge generational saga in one book? Please give us some tips.
Sure. I think I would concur to what Dr. Harshali and Shrutapa have said. I think when you do research, there's a lot of material available. It depends on how you want to use that material, and how much of time you want to how. So for me, research was important, but that was not the core of my book. I wanted research to make my story plausible and relatable, right? But I was not doing a historical theme, so my research was slightly more peripheral than what Dr. Harshali and Shutpa did, which was very core. But I think to give legitimacy to what you're trying to talk about, and to give it some sort of a reality, I think talking about history and relevant facts, even when you're writing literary fiction, I think it's very important. You can't fib. You can't uh, you can't distort some of the facts, unless you are creating this completely imaginary world which is completely disconnected from the reality of any time. Then I think that's, I don't write dystopian literature, I don't write fantasy. But yeah, so long as you're writing something which needs to be rooted in a socio political context of the times, research is very important.
Absolutely. Yes, for historical writing, research, research, and more research, but also know when to stop. That is very important. Thank you, Harshali, Dinesh, and Chitapa for all your insights into your books and into your writing process. I would quickly ask you to select the questions that you liked so that we can gift your books to the readers. Uh, Please go ahead and tell me the names of the people, of the questions, probably just the questions that you like, so that I can select the names of the people.
uh,
Uh, I like the one on the research and how to segregate it, or which part to like. I mean, which part to write about and which part to kind of leave out.
Right. All right. I think it
The
was Deepa that
different
asked.
types of, yeah.
Uh,
Was this question? Ranjani's, when writing a book on history, has the freedom to add their own perspectives, or should it be just a narrative? Or was it this question? In the course of your research, varying versions of the same event.
Yeah,
It was this
yeah, yeah, yeah.
question. Yeah.
Deepa Vishali,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Congratulations, Deepa. Sutapa, do you have a winner for us? And
uh,
Dinesh?
I would like Natasha's question. Research is such a fun thing to do. How does one decide
Yes.
enough has been done?
Yes.
So,
Yes. Yes. All right. Dinesh, do you have names for me?
I don't. I'm sorry, I was not keeping track.
All right. All right. No problem. We'll get in touch with you later on with the questions that our viewers have asked, and then you can select from
Sure.
them.
Happy to do that.
All
Yeah.
right. Thank you so much
Thank
for coming
you.
here, for giving us these insights. It has been such a pleasure talking to you. And I'm sure all of our viewers are definitely going to pick up all your books and read them. And if you do pick up their books, please remember to leave a review on Amazon for all of them. They are fantastic books. Thank you so much, Harshali,
Thank you.
Shutapa, and Dinesh.
Thank you.
Thank
thank
you
you.
all.
Thank you,
Lovely
Monica.
speaking to
That
you
was
all.
so
Thank you.
well, yes,
Thank you,
well
Ashali and
shared,
Dinesh.
and thank you so
Thank you.
much. Thank you
Bye
so
bye.
much. It was wonderful to be here.
Bye.
Bye.
Say
Bye bye.
bye
Bye.
bye.